So I picked up one of the new 2015 Apple MacBook 12-inch Retina units. I was really interested to see whether it would be a more productive, lightweight travel buddy for me. I mean, historically, I've been a big fan of the iPad. However, as somebody who likes to take a lot of notes in sessions and meetings, well, the iPad can be a bit restrictive. It's great for consuming, not so good for actually producing content. So I thought perhaps the MacBook was a great answer for this issue. There's hardly anything in it weight-wise, and the ability to carry it about is pretty much the same. And yet it seems to offer a far more flexible platform for actually producing stuff rather than just consuming. So I'm not going to review the device here. There's loads of articles out there already doing that. So what I'm interested in is just showing the general performance of it. Bear in mind I'm currently recording the screen. That seems to have about a 20% hit on the performance. So in real world I expect it to be a bit faster than what you're going to see here. So if we have a look, we should be able to see which one this is. So this is the lowest spec unit. It's the 256 gig SSD with 8 gig of RAM and the 1.1 gig Intel Core M processor in it. What's interesting though is if you start looking at the benchmarks, which we can pull up here. So you can see up the top here, this is the Geekbench results. So of course if I compare it to my 15-inch MacBook Pro, the one with the i7 in, obviously the i7 one is way more capable. What is particularly interesting though is if you start looking at the MacBook Airs, so it kind of gives you a rough equivalency to a similar sort of machine. So let's have a look at that. So these are the results from all the recent MacBook Airs. It's only when you get back to the mid 2011 13-inch we start to get a comparable sort of figure. So it should give you an indication of, what that performance is like. Also, if you look at the drive performance, you'll see that the SSD is still a fast unit, but it's not a patch on the ones in the Retina MacBook Pros, for example. So the one at the bottom there is the one from my 15-inch i7. The one at the top is for the one from this MacBook. So it's still a very fast, capable device, but don't expect it to be as fast as some of the other Retina units. So let's have a look at some of the real-world experience. I'll fire up some apps and we can have a look at that. Like I say, just bear in mind I am recording the screen right now, and that does seem to slow this down, probably about 15 to 20%. It's freshly booted up, there's nothing cached, so let's fire some apps up and you can have a look at it. So let's start with Word. There we go. We'll also fire up Excel. There we go. So what I'm finding that when I'm not recording the screen, it's taking about 3 seconds or so just to start Word and Excel up. Of course, once the apps are started, they are perfectly usable. You don't really notice them being on a slower machine. Obviously, that's going to depend on what spreadsheets you load, for example. Same with Word. If I've got a couple of versions open, it is perfectly usable. It's quite surprising, really. The other question that comes up is around virtualization. So let's have a look at the virtualization capability of the machine because it is capable of running Windows as well, certainly within Fusion, which is what I have installed here. So let's fire up Fusion. I'll fire up my Windows 10 machine. You can see what the performance is like in that. Okay, so let's get logged in. And there we are. Obviously it's not anything like as quick as my i7, but it is pretty usable. I mean, let's fire up Word and Excel are actually in this, and you can see what the performance is like in Windows. I think you'll agree that's perfectly usable. There we go. Let's fire up Excel as well. There we go. Now there are some other things. I mean, let's have a look at things like suspending the machine and restarting it up. So let's see what the performance on that is like. So what I'm going to do is just suspend this machine. There we go. That was pretty quick. So let's fire it up again. There we go. So I think you can see it is actually really usable. I mean, it is fast. I mean, it's not an i7. It's not as quick as my 13-inch Pro that I sometimes use as my travel machine, but it is perfectly usable. So let's just shut this machine down. Now, if I do think about things that maybe I do find a little bit frustrating with it, well, it's occurred to me it's because of the way that I'm trying to use the machine. If I was using this like an iPad, it does absolutely everything I could ask of it. And the fact that I can fire up Windows and I can use my work Windows environment just as well as another machine, for example. Yeah, it's not as quick as some of my other units, but the fact that I can do it on the go, I think it's introducing frustrations where it's because I'm trying to do more with the machine. Now, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. So as long as you know what you're buying and what you're buying it for, then personally, I think these are great devices. And for me, it's certainly going to be more productive than just carrying around an iPad. On the other hand, if I'm heading out and I'm just traveling and I'm not going to be taking notes, but maybe if I want to watch movies and stuff like that, then maybe the iPad's still got a place in my bag. But yeah, I'm pretty impressed with this unit so far. So the other query I get is, what about multiple virtual machines? So that can be a bit challenging. It's very, very useful. Certainly in my role anyway, I often want to have two or three, maybe four or five machines up and running. Now I'm not suggesting that this unit is the right one to be doing that sort of work on. I wouldn't be, running my demo lab on it. It's certainly not capable of that, but it can certainly stand up a couple of VMs. So to give you an example, let's just start Fusion again. So I've got a couple set up here. I've got a machine that's a Windows 10 unit, and I've also got a Windows 2012 server. So let's start up the server. There we go. Let's get logged into this. It's only a 2012 box, 2012 R2, sorry. Doesn't have any roles installed, but it's a server and it's a virtual machine. If we look at the spec that I've assigned to this, you'll see that I've got two of the four, well, it's only a dual core processor, but two of the virtual cores assigned to this unit. And you'll see that I've only got 2 gig of RAM assigned to it. So that's our server operating system. So let's jump across and fire up our Windows 10 one as well. Got a nice little warning that I'm already running virtual machines, so we'll get rid of that, I think. There we go. That's our Windows 10 machine fired up. So let's get logged into that. And there we go. So we've now got a couple of machines running, so we can fire up Word and Excel to show what it looks like. We've still got our 2012 server over here, and if we have a look at activity monitor, there you go. So from a CPU perspective, you'll see VMware is taking up most of the processor usage right now, which is what you'd expect. A small chunk of it as well has been taken up by my screen recording software, but everything's operational. It's certainly usable as well. Now, what I've found is anything beyond about two virtual machines, it starts to get a bit unusable. It gets a little bit too sluggish. If you want to stand up a machine that's got a specific role and does something, absolutely specific, then chances are it will work. But if you want to be operating and doing things like I am here with Excel, for example, then it doesn't become very usable, and you probably need a more powerful machine. But for one or two virtual machines, it's perfectly usable. So let's shut these down, and we can have a look and see what that performs like as well. That's that one done. Let's shut down our Windows 10 machine as well. There we go. It's done. So yes, you can run a couple of machines. Anything beyond that becomes a little bit unusual. But like I said earlier, as a general travel buddy, something a bit more flexible and a bit more capable than say something like an iPad, I think these units are actually pretty good.